So today we're going to talk about hoses. Hoses are an integral part of our operation at EnviroClean. The three main ones that we tend to utilize, as you can see here, Alex, are the pressure hose on the very right. That's used in conjunction with our pressure washers. We have our water hose here on the left. That's used for water going to the pressure washer, or if we have to flush out some gutters or extend the hose, which would be the middle here, is our tucker pole hose, which goes with our water-fed poles. So sometimes we might connect a water hose to the end of the tucker hose to get longer reach, and we won't have to change water sources around a property, say if you're working in a townhouse complex, as much. So working with hoses, it's important to keep them well managed. If your hoses aren't well managed, they're going to be getting tangled up, and it's especially important when we are transporting to and from the job site in the back of the vehicle. If they're not well maintained and well coiled up, they're going to be snagging on stuff, they're going to be knotting up in the back of the vehicle, and that just decreases efficiency once you get to the next job, because you have to be spending 5-10 minutes getting your hoses all uncoiled. So right here, this is what we want the hoses to look like at the end of the day and what we want to be starting the day with. So I'm just going to go over uncoiling the hoses and coiling them back together again. So we'll first start with the pressure hose here. So with the pressure hose, just like with the water hose, before I uncoil, it's important to mention the ends. You have the female side and you have the male sides to each hose. In this case, the female side would be this for the pressure hose, the female side would be this for the water hose, and then respectively male side, pressure hose, water hose. What's important is you don't want to drag the wrong side of the hose. So when it comes to the water hose, it is the male side you don't want to drag. And that's because you see these threads here. When these get dragged along the pavement, it's going to compromise these threads, and they're not going to thread in to whatever it is that you need it to thread onto. And in that case, we then have to go replace this whole fitting, and it decreases efficiency. For the pressure hose side, the sides you don't want to drag is the female side. And the reason for that is when you drag this along the side, the couple ends up getting rocks and debris stuck in there, and this mechanism ends up getting caught up. So with that in mind, don't drag the male side of the water hose and don't drag the female side of the pressure hose. So when we're uncoiling that, it's important to remember, because we don't want to drag the female side of the pressure hose, we're going to pull from the female side. And so the way we do that is we'll set the hose on the ground, and while pulling, we're going to be twisting the hose in the direction that it's coiled. And so as you can see, as I'm going backwards, I'm twisting the hose at the same time. And that's allowing it to uncoil perfectly like that. I would keep doing that until I get to the very end and the hose is nice as uncoiled. The same goes for the water hose. However, as mentioned, we don't want to drag the male side in this case. Thus, we pull from the male side. Same thing. While pulling back, I'm twisting the hose, and that allows it to uncoil in the shape without any issues, just like that. Now, it's also important to mention, when you've got multiple people working, hoses are going to be going all over the place, and once they intersect and two people go in opposite directions, suddenly the two hoses are tangled. and so people have to backtrack. So it's important, a rule of thumb we go by is, whoever is already working in the area first, the next person who comes to work in that same area, if they're working around that first person's hoses, they always need to go underneath the first person's hose. So anytime you come to an area and someone's already working there with hoses, make sure you're running your hose underneath their hose. That way you won't get tangled when you go in opposite directions. If one person is always going under, then that way you know it's not going to get tangled. It keeps the efficiency nice. One last hose here I can show is the tucker pull hose. So to undo the tucker pull hose, we would find the end without the metal fitting. With the tucker pull hose, you don't have to worry about which side you drag. So you would set it down, and then you would just pull. So now that we've got our hoses coiled out, we won't fully coil out these water hoses, but it'll still serve to show. Now we want to say coil them up again. We're at the end of the job and we want to put the hoses back in the state like we found them. And so we're going to coil them out, or coil them back in, excuse me. So an important thing when coiling hoses is that the end that you're looking to coil is completely straight. If it's not completely straight, when you start trying to coil it, it's going to kink up. So it's very important that you know that your hose is fully straight. Once it's fully straight, you can start coiling. And the way we do that is, we take the hose in between our legs, position ourselves like this, and we're going to pull in between our legs while twisting the hose like that. And if done correctly in the same motion, see, as I pull, I'm twisting and setting the hose down. Then it's just going to fall back in the position that you saw originally. Just like that. Same thing with the pressure hose. Just like that. And so it's important to mention that we don't want to drag the male side of the water hose, and we don't want to drag the female side of the pressure hose. So it's the opposites. And again, I've went over that already, why that is, but it's very important that when you are setting up to coil up your hose, you're holding on to the side that you don't want to drag, and that you're pulling the opposite side of that. And that way you're not getting into any situation where you're going to be damaging these ends. Finally, with the tucker hose, when it's time to coil that up, we just use our arm like that. We take the grip with the coupled side over our arm, and we just go like this. And we'll do this all the way down to the very end. We get to the very end like that, leave ourselves about 5 feet, take that off our shoulder, we'll use the end to tighten it down like that. And this way we know it's not going to be getting snagged. Just run it through one time. We know it's not going to be getting snagged in the back of the vehicle, and it's ready to go for the next person to utilize and not have issues with any sort of knots, and kings.